Okay, testing the Watkins Clubman. After testing the valves and replacing the L84, put the valves back in. I've checked all the other components, the capacitors, to make sure that they were alright, and the big capacitor, the 3-part one, is pretty close on my tester. I think it's a 20 microfarad, a 3-part, and they were measuring still about 17. If the capacitor is going to go, it will either be swollen up, look strange, or the capacitance will be way off. And the capacitance was okay. The other electrolytic capacitors on the cathodes of the ECC83 and the EL84, they're 25 microfarad ones. They look alright. Even if they'd gone down a bit on their capacitance, it wouldn't affect the circuit. All the other resistors look fine. I'm not going to change any components on here just because they're old. If they're fine, it's best to leave them. They're going to be fine. A lot of people change everything on these old amps. I don't, unless there's something wrong with them. Hiss, hum, noise is always going to be there. Would have been there from new. If you want an amp that doesn't hiss or hum, buy a new one. Anyway, so I checked all the components, and I ramped up the voltage slowly, checking that the capacitor was going to be okay after it had probably hadn't been used for a few years. And up here I've got the Elac, which I've ramped up slowly. I've set it at 235 volts. The current, always watch the current in case if there's a fault you always get a high current, but that's only on about 0.2 of an amp, which is fine. I've got I put on 3 voltmeters down here, all on the HT lines. I've got one on the B+, which is 285. There's one on the anode of the L84, which is showing 265 volts, and there's one on the next supply down, which is just before the ECC83 dropper, is showing 268, 269, which means that there's no excessive current or problems with the voltages. I also put a voltmeter across the cathode resistor on the EL84, showing 7 volts. That's across 130 ohms, so that gives you approximately 54 milliamps through the single-ended transformer output. Just there, 130 ohms. So 54 milliamps is what I guess it would be, about that. So that looks good too. There's a little bit of background noise, and the pots are a bit scratchy. But who cares about a bit of scratchiness on the pots? You're not going to turn them that often anyway. Turn the tone control up full, a little bit of hiss, all looking good. So I've had it on a little while and it's looking fine. This circuit's a bit odd actually. I drew out the circuit diagram, and the input's fairly straightforward. It's a bit weird. It's got a capacitor on the input, on the solo input, of a 0.01. You don't normally put capacitors on the inputs. And between the solo and the rhythm, it's 47k, 100k. On the solo, with the capacitor, it's in parallel, so it drops the input resistance a bit, a little bit of volume, not much change. Everything else is pretty straightforward. 100k anode load, 3k3 here. Not a lot of gain. Some people use 1k5 here. I haven't tested it with the guitar yet, but see if there's enough gain. Very simple. Goes through volume control, 500k. It's got a very simple little tone control here for tone cut, and a little bit of tone boost with 470 picofarads here, which if you turn the tone up fully you get a little bypass on the volume control if you haven't got that full. If you've got volume control up full, it won't have any effect anyway. Goes straight into the second part of the ECC83. Again, another 3k3 here, so it's not massive gain, but should be enough. 100k here. Goes into the EL84. there's about 220 picofarad here, I think, or 270 picofarad. Very small. I don't know if they put that in for stability. It's not normally necessary to cut the treble on in these little amps for stability. And anyway, if you wanted stability, you would put it right on the grid. There's a little grid capacitance there with the input resistors. It would stop any oscillation. I can't see why there'd be any oscillation in this amp. It's just not complicated. Now the output section is very strange in this amp. I could not quite get my head around how it works exactly or why they've done it. A very small transformer. Transformers are very cheap in those days, used in everything, record players, radios, all sorts of things. It would be very easy to buy a cheap transformer for a single output off the shelf anywhere. Well, they bought this one, and it's wired up very strangely. Although it's got a small resistance, a small part of the coil here is actually fed through, the power goes through it. Don't know why they've done that exactly. It's a bit like like a choke, but the main part of the transformer here is connected to the anode of the EL84. That gives you the signal to the speaker. But that doesn't end there, because the speaker, the cathode here, 130 ohm, and the bypass capacitor 25 mu, would normally be connected directly to earth, but for some reason in this amp it's connected through the speaker winding. It goes up to here, and then the speaker winding and down to earth here. Well, that will give you a little bit of feedback, I suppose, but I'm going to double check this, because it means that the current, DC standing current, will be flowing through the speaker and the coil winding all the time, which is a bit odd. Maybe it's a part of a circuit I'm not familiar with. That would give you a bit of feedback or reduce hum or something. Anyway, and they've got a little snubber circuit here. Again, not normally necessary on these small power amps, which basically normally you wire it across the transformer input, but it basically ends up at ground, which does the same thing, but it's still very odd, the wiring, very odd. Normally in these cheap amps you want everything as simple as possible, and just use a simple circuit like the same as everyone else. Anyway, very strange output. If anyone can tell me why they've done that, I'd be pleased to know. And the rectifier EZ80, the heater is connected at the anode potential, which is 285 volts, which is just about. You've got to be careful. You don't never do that with heaters and connect the heater too high, or it breaks down. Anyway, it's got its own separate heater winding for the EZ80, and then there's the heater winding for the ECC83 and the L84. Those got a centre tap on the transformer. They didn't use a centre tap. Could have done, and you could put a little resistor thing in here and reduce the hum a bit, but on one hand they're trying to save money by not doing that, and then on the other hand they have a strange transformer and put components in like this capacitor and this capacitor at the beginning, which I don't see were necessary why they put them in. Anyway, we put seems to be working fine. Little Elac speaker, 8-inch, is a 4 ohm, and I can hear it buzzing away in the background. It's silent, just a little bit of hum, so it's obviously working. I'm going to put a guitar through it and see how it goes, but everything else seems to be stable. All the voltages are stables. They've gone down, voltage has gone down a fraction, not sure, as it's heated up a little bit, lost a little bit of voltage, nothing to worry about. So I'll screw it back together and put a guitar through it then, and then this one will be finished, and then I can move on to the Westminster one. Okay, good. Okay, the Watkins Clubman. I've just plugged the guitar into it. We're going to just test it for sound. Just going to play a few chords. I've plugged it into the solo input there, and I'm just going to play a couple of chords and things to see what it sounds like. Here we go. Sounds pretty good to me, pretty responsive. Put it onto the bass pickup. I don't expect much bass through this little amp here, so. Distortion sounds pretty good to me, so I'll screw it back together and do a final test. Okay, this is the Watkins Clubman which we had a look at earlier. Just plugged the guitar in just to check it out. So I've got two controls, volume and tone. The tone is about halfway up at the moment. Strat type guitar. Treble, really ear piercing, in between pickup. Quite punchy sort of sound. Try the bass. Leave the treble nearly on full. Treble. The treble control up full. Turn the treble down. Treble pickup, bass pickup. Pretty muddy sound, bit of treble. Well, treble nil. We'll turn the treble up full on bass pickup. Nice sound. There's a bit of cabinet resonance on the bass notes if you play them really loud. I don't know whether it's the cabinet or I think it's the back panel here. I'll put my hand on it, I can really flex. It's this, it's only about 1/4 inch ply on the back vibrating. Something making a little vibration sound. Really nice sounds, just fantastic. A bit of hum in the background, but when you're playing loud, who cares? You can't really go any louder on the volume, it really distorts. If I turn the volume up a bit more. Quite a growly sound at the bottom. It's a fantastic amp. I mean, really, I don't think they've improved amps since they made these things. Anyway, I'll be checking out the Watkins Westminster in a minute.